As I wrap up my first year of college, I want to reflect on what I have learned. Many of the texts in my human event course revolved around dealing with others as the central theme. Last semester, my podcast centered around whether or not we have an obligation to help others, and I concluded that we actually do. This presentation will dive further into that concept. The issue in my podcast is that I assumed everyone was on the same level in society. In application, however, that is simply not true because groups are marginalized. These people have unique challenges when participating in society. The issue then becomes, how do we go about fixing this problem? John Stuart Mill, who wrote On Liberty, argues that we would improve marginalization by having open discussions. He focused on how the oppressors can very well be the active part of the community, in a concept he labeled social tyranny. However, there are certain ideas in this that he does not discuss. Marginalization and oppression instill fear in the people and reduces hope for change in the longer it continues. Many marginalized people will remain quiet for their safety. For example, a queer teenager may not openly discuss their sexuality because they fear that their unaccepting parents would kick them out of the home and leave them for themselves. Further, not everyone is willing to listen to those who are different. We saw this in Frederick Douglass's narrative, where slaves could speak about how little they were being fed to their slave owner, but unless another white slave owner shamed these maltreatments, nothing would actually change, and the slaves may very well be punished for speaking out. Part of being a marginalized person means being silenced and forced into risky situations. This is why I turned to Audre Lorde and transformation of silence into language and action. Lorde was faced with her own mortality when diagnosed with cancer, and she found that she regretted her silences the most. She was then pushed to use her voice because of this. Audre Lorde forces readers to reflect on when they kept silent, then she basically tells the reader to forget about those worries because they're already marginalized. Those who are marginalized must use their voice because language will inevitably become action. And this is the responsibility of those who are marginalized, which then brings the question of what is the responsibility of everyone else. First, while active oppressors and mere observers are different groups of people, both benefit from the marginalization of groups of people in this scenario. This is why I am grouping them both together and turning to Martha Nussbaum and the narrative imagination. Nussbaum focuses on storytelling as a way to learn compassion. She argues that if literary imagination develops compassion, and if compassion is essential for civic responsibility, then we have a good reason to teach works that promote themes of compassionate understanding we want and need. These same concepts can be applied to people's everyday actions. People must use their imagination to understand that they could be the marginalized person too. So it's important to apply compassionate understanding in our actions and teach compassionate understanding to our children. Compassion, then, is a civic obligation because, as I argued in my podcast and stated in High School Musical, we are all in this together. However, being in either group is not mutually exclusive. One thing many people forget when discussing discrimination is intersectionality. Marginalization can happen in one area and not in another. For example, a poor, white, able-bodied gay man is disadvantaged in socioeconomic and sexual ways, but not in racial, gendered, or disabled ways. Intersectionality is a complication to an already complex discussion of marginalization. This is why it is so important for everyone to speak out when they are being mistreated, and why all of us must actively use our imagination to be more compassionate for those who are being marginalized. This is our responsibility as people sharing the world with others. Thank you for your time.